Listen to the Islanders Never Say Die podcast, your one-stop shop for Islanders news, analysis, and opinions, featuring the biggest personalities in sports podcasting, TJ and the Grumpy Old Man.
That's right, TJ. If you want your opinions viewed through orange and blue colored glasses from an Islander Bobo and charter member of the Louis Trust crowd, you'll love the measured commentary from TJ. On the other hand, if you want the unvarnished truth of a hockey purist, a genius, a legend, and an all-around great guy, the Grumpy Old Man's insane ramblings will be just what you need to survive each and every week.
An all-around great guy? Well, we also have weekly installments of Stump the Grump, an absolute fan favorite. Make sure to participate in our live streams and listen every Monday and Thursday to the bi-weekly podcast. You can find the Islanders Never Say Die podcast on the Hockey Podcast Network.
I was walking through the halls of a Minnesota rink when along came a Wild fan who started talking smack to me. He said, I bet you never liked the Blues until they won a cup. And so I calmly turned to him and said, hey man, listen up. I admit it's pretty great to win Lord Stanley's prize, but listen, I've been waiting for this moment my whole life. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup in here, 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues. I know Brett Hull, Courtnall, Campbell, Cujo, Jenny Oates, Brown, Chase, Fuhr, Zombo, Cecil, Butcher, Shanny, Tilly, Tuttle, Sutter, Twister, Turcotte, Kimball, Turgeon, Barron, Basson, Pronger, Pearson, Bergevin, Bozon, Al McInnes, Crab, Chuck, Howard, Chuck, Petrovicky, Pellerin, Dimitra, Yate, Corson, Conrad, Gretzky. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Yes, sir, I'm a Blues fan. Heartbreak's all I knew, man. That team from old St. Lou, man. Got a cup near 52, man. Give me a Let's Go Blues.
Hello and welcome to Blue Note, located on the best city in the Mississippi, the best in the Midwest. We've got that Stanley Cup power, too sweet to be sour. And if you're still clueless, we're talking about St. Louis. I'm the captain of the ship, Tom Franklin, already in drinking mode here, and I'm joined by my executive officer, Wags. Wags, I hope you got a drink as well, or if you had some, because this is going to be an emotional episode.
I've libated myself a lot already today, so I am ready to go. I'm gonna hold off on drinking during the show, but I am ready for this, or at least as ready as I'm ever going to be.
Well, you might be the coherent one here by the time the episode is done, because I'm drinking, just in case you're wondering, because they do this on the Soda Pod where they ask, what are you drinking? And they always talk about the beers that they're drinking. This is a White Russian. This is a White Russian, and I'm drinking a White Russian, not just because it's my favorite, liquor, cocktail, but it's also, in honor of the Detroit Red Wings of 1995-96, who had about 5 White Russians, that helped break our hearts. So, here's to you, Red Wings. This one's for you.
Salute.
Salud. Couple little business notes to get along out of the way here, including a ginormous announcement here on Blue Notes. Probably our biggest guest that we've had yet on Blue Notes. It's going to debut on Thursday. We're going to talk about that real quick. But first, $5 off of our Blue Note shirts, like the one I'm wearing, like the one Wags is wearing, with the code Keenan Sucks, S-U-X. At our Teespring store. You can find it in the description below. You can wear a shirt just like the one that Guy the White Blues fan wears for his Aloha commentary podcast at a special price now through the end of Monday the 30th at our Teespring store. Check that out if you've been wanting to get a deal on one of these and rep your favorite blues podcast. All right, announcement time. So we're rubbing our hands for this one because this is hot. So we've had a lot of great guests on our show so far. We had blues organist Jeremy Boyer. We've had Post-Dispatch writer Jim Thomas. We have had, obviously the Wyatt Blues fan, Luke Whitbin, Teriyaki Fingers. Was a very special video later on in this episode as well. This is a big episode we're talking about here, and that includes this big announcement. So we're going back to 2 days, 2 episodes a week, starting this very week. We will have an episode on Thursdays going forward. It's the old schedule that we had before the pandemic hit and ruined our lives. But we're going to do the Thursday episodes audio only, at least to start. So find Blue Notes wherever you get your podcast from, and you'll want to find Thursday's episode because Wags, myself, and Gabriel Foley of Last Word on Hockey and the St. Louis Game Time will be interviewing St. Louis Blues first round pick Jake Neighbors. We got Jake Neighbors. We're going to record with him this week, and we're going to release the episode on Thursday. Our discussion with Blues first round pick Jake Neighbors. And what a guy. And you're wondering, well, how did you pull this off? Well, it's very simple. I tweeted him right after he was drafted by the Blues, and he checked his DMs about a month and a half later and said, "Okay, I'll come on." So, that's just in case you're wondering how professional broadcasters do it. This is how we do. We just tweet spam people and they respond 6 weeks later. I mean, that's how it works in the industry, right, Wags?
Oh, totally. And honestly, what kind of player or person is this guy going to be when he responds to those kinds of tweets and agrees to come on, our little show? So that right there tells you kind of what kind of person and player the Blues are getting. Somebody that is going to interact with the community and be someone that you're going to be proud to say is a St. Louis Blues. So I'm excited to talk with him. I cannot wait for this interview. Well,
they say Jake Neighbors is quite a character, and his play on the ice kind of reflects it a little bit, So looking forward to chatting with him. It's going to be audio only on Thursday. We might release the video later on YouTube, but we want to make sure you're listening to our podcast as well. So our audio podcast, rather. And also, at some point during this episode that we're doing right here, we're going to put out a tweet. If you want to ask Jake Neighbors anything, let us know. We'll put out the tweet here later on in this episode. So we want your fan questions. Gabriel's going to have his questions. We're going to have our questions. So please feel free to join us on Thursday. But get those questions in because we're going to be recording with him very, very soon. So no actual hockey news again this week. I guess Pierre LeBrun tweeted out the other day that there has been discussions between the two sides, but nothing imminent, nothing really, no new ground was broken in those discussions. So here we are, Wags. We're in the same position as everyone, just wondering when the hell we're going to have hockey again.
Yeah, we really are. And for a while there, up until LeBrun's tweet, we were worried that things were breaking down because there was no communication between the players and the owners. It seemed like there was going to be a stalemate, and you were thinking, oh gosh, February maybe is when they're going to start. But now that there seems to be some sort of communication lines between the two, it makes you confident. Obviously, January 1st is probably not going to happen because I think you would have to have had made that decision really this week to really get that ball rolling. So February is looking more and more likely. But just the fact that they're talking makes it feel like there actually might be something that actually comes about this coming season. And I'm hopeful for it. I'm happy for it. I know I'm praying to every god that's imaginable to make sure that there's some sort of hockey. Because, I get a chance to watch my nephew play, but watching 8-year-olds versus NHL players, at some point we got to progress.
I always think back to those NBA commercials, or I guess those Nike commercials in the 90s when the NBA had their lockout. And I remember one commercial where you had Samuel L. Jackson sitting in the driveway of watching, some, very unathletic guys playing horse, in their driveway hoop. And, he looks back at the camera and says, a game of horse. It's fantastic. Well, that's kind of where we are right now because, nephew's hockey games is just about all we've got right now. Granted, we do have college hockey. If you're lucky enough to live in a town that has a college team playing hockey, at least for the Division I levels anyway, we're still waiting for the sub NCAA games to go on. And even Jake Neighbors himself, he's not playing hockey right now. He is sitting at home in air dry Alberta right now. So that's probably one of the reasons why we got a chance to talk to him because he's just not really doing anything right now, along with as junior players are even wondering in Canada, like, did you see in Canada, like Ontario is saying that players can't check each other, or at least they're considering that. That can't work.
I don't even know how that's possible because, I mean, I play roller hockey and we don't allow checking in that, but there's still lots of physical play. So, like, what are you labeling as a check? Like,
and how do you enforce it? You know, I mean, like if you're like, you know, scrumming along the boards, you know, and you have your body on another player, is that considered a check? I mean, you can't enforce that. And it basically, you know, you're walking a line between turning hockey into something that isn't hockey, you know, because hockey is a physical sport. It's one reason why we love watching hockey is because it's a physical sport. So we'll see what happens with that. But in the meantime, no real info to talk about there. And if it sounds like I'm rambling to avoid our topic of the episode, it's because I am. It's our number one most stomach-turning moment in Blues history. Gretzky had it, lost it. I actually had to watch that video for research earlier today, and the White Russian started right, you know, not long after that. So, you know,
well, I've changed my mind and my tune. I am going to enjoy a beverage as well. So,
okay, is that is that a Play Gloria version of the?
It is a 2019 Cup champion.
It is.
So it is a Play Gloria. So at least we have that. We've got the Stanley Cup, and we can at least wash this down knowing that we have a championship.
Well, and I hope that beer's not flat because I think that's been out in the market for about a year or so. So
it's still good.
It's still good. Good. Victory still tastes great.
Yes.
All righty. So, yes. And in addition to our number one most stomach turning moment, we also have our honorable mention. That is Brett Hull leaving St. Louis, you know, a couple years after that calamity happened. And we have two special contributions, not one, but two special contributions for our number one most stomach turning moment of in Blues history. Of course, we're going to have our Aloha commentary coming up. Guy really went all out for this one. He hit multiple stops on his Aloha commentary this week as a couple honorable mentions. And his number one moment is actually a moment I think we overlooked a little bit. It's a good moment, and it's definitely worthy of top five discussion. Very, very much so. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let me tell you about Luke Whitman. He is known on Twitter as Teriyaki Fingers. Please, for the love of God, follow Luke Whitman. He is a wonderful human being, but he's also a very talented Weird Al Yankovic recording artist. He's a song parody genius. He does our intro song that you hear every single episode. Of course, he was a guest on our show a few months ago. And you probably heard his Blues goalie music video that we played a couple weeks ago here on Blue Notes as well. But nothing that Mr. Whitman has done up till this point surpasses the special video that he did for our number one moment. It's going to get us a copyright claim on YouTube, but it's totally worth it because we're not making any money on there anyway, so screw it. In fact, I don't think they even like people drinking on YouTube, but so we'll see how long this episode actually lasts on YouTube. But you know what? We're pulling out all the stops here, and that includes one Luke Whitman. Here is his latest music video. It's great. Enjoy it.
I'm going under, and this time I fear I've lost all my feeling. This all or nothing is the price to pay for hiring Keenan. He traded Shanny away, and Cujo as well. Got rid of Duchesne, feels weight's off the scale, but he got back in shape. And Pronger was great. And then in February we all heard of the trade. Now the Blues lean on the grade one, and like the whole team is over 30 bucks. We've got Gretzky and we've got Brett Hull. I was thinking that St. Louis was gonna win the cup. We're in the playoffs with the hottest goalie in the league. The Blues were rolling with a Game 1 win against the Leafs. Then our dreams were crashed right into the goal. Extras knee ripped to shreds by Nick Kiprios. With Casey and Ned, the Blues would win anyway. Down 2-0 in the next round, they came back with 3 straight. Now the Blues lead the Red Wings 3-2. But in Game 6, they couldn't break through. Game 7, no score, 2 OT, no luck. And that's when Gretzky had it and lost the puck. And I tend to close my eyes, 'cause it hurts every time I think about that shot. It's a great one, glides, eyes are men, surprise breaks heart. What was belief ends in a wrenching loss, and Gretzky's not here when the next season starts. We let our guard down, and Keenan pulled the rug. I was thinking that St. Louis was gonna win the cup, and the Red Wings, they always kicked us out for 3 years. 4th year was stars with Hall. That's what we get for getting our hopes up. I was thinking that St. Louis was gonna win the cup. Now we're the best team, a new millennium. I am sure the Sharks won't keep the Blues from winning the cup.
He did it again.
He did. He really did. I started tearing up a little bit listening to that one.
Oh man, once he got to the Gretzky had it, and then he lost the puck part. Yeah, it was emotional. It was emotional. And by the way, 2 thumbs up to Luke Whitbin's interpretive dancing in that video. I mean, you know, when we say that, you know, our Blue Notes family goes the extra mile for you, you know, we have Guy climbing mountains, and then we have Luke doing beautiful interpretive dancing. Stick taps to Luke Whitbin. We're gonna have to play that later some point, I think. Yeah. We definitely have to play that later. Beautiful stuff. And that leads us into our number 1 most stomach-turning Blues moment in history, which is that very moment. And before we get to that point, Guy, the YA Blues fan, he went to multiple locations this week for his Aloha commentary. He's got a couple honorable mentions to start us off here, and then he's going to talk about his number 1 most gut-wrenching moment in Blues history. So without further ado, here is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan.
Aloha! And welcome to the Blue Notes Pod. I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, host of the Blue Note Fan Report. And this is my Aloha commentary. Well, we've reached the end of our journey. Almost. We have discussed the numbers 2 through 5 and 7 through 10 most gut-wrenching moments in St. Louis Blues history. And here they are. Now it's time to move on to a very sad moment in Blues history, and a moment that almost every Blues fan would never forget until July 12th, 2019. So, in order to talk about my number 9 moment, or probably not my number 9, my number 6 moment, we need to take a little bit of a journey. So please, join me as we go on a bit of a trail. As you just seen, we took an ATV through the mountains of Colwell Ranch. A lot of movies were filmed here, and it was happy times. But on Memorial Day, 1977, in Lee Summit, Missouri, at the farm of Gary Unger's house, my number 6 moment happened. They had a after-season picnic, barbecue on Memorial Day at Gary's farm, and Bob Gessoff was there with his pregnant wife. And towards the end of the afternoon, they had been on some four-wheelers, much like we had just been on, and decided to ride a motorcycle, a couple of dirt bikes. Unfortunately, this turned tragic. While riding the dirt bike, Bob Gessoff had a head-on collision with a car that was coming to the ranch. It was a gopher going out and getting ice and things like that. He was rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, he was DOA. His son, Gary Jr., is the bright spot out of this. Gary played a little bit of hockey, but Gary is I think he's a commander in the United States Navy SEALs. Gary Jr., has carried on his father's legacy. He was a small, tough man, and he was somebody that the Blues loved to have on his team. He was greatly missed, and the Blues did something really nice and retired his number. I've talked to Bruce Affleck, who was there that day, and you can still hear the sadness in his voice when he talks about that. Is Bob Gessoff's death. Well, we've almost come to the end of our journey, and it's actually been a lot of fun going over these top 10 most gut-wrenching moments. I talked about my number 9 moment being number 6 moment being Bob Gessoff passing away. The guy's number 6 moment we talked about earlier with me was Brett Hull signing as a free agent with Dallas and leaving. Unfortunately, that tenure of Brett Hull wore out, and not much more we could do about that. So, I'm standing in the heart of Waikiki, next to the Duke Keeaumoku statue. Duke was considered the father of open ocean surfing, and probably one of the greatest surfers that ever lived. This is a fitting spot to talk about the number 1 most gut-wrenching moment. On May 12th, 1996, in Hockeytown at Joe Louis Arena, 13 of 14 possible Hall of Famers stepped on the ice for what turned out to be an epic Game 7 in the second round. The Blues and the Detroit Red Wings, 7 Hall of Famers on each side. Now, bear in mind, the Detroit Red Wings Hall of Famers were younger in their career, where most of the Blues were older in their careers toward the end of them. But that's the power and the magnitude that you had on that ice that day. At the second overtime, very early, John Casey gets tested, he's ready, and the puck goes back and forth a little bit. All of a sudden, with a few minutes gone, puck is passed, Gretzky catches it with his stick, and the famous lines, "Gretzky had it, lost it," are uttered. Problem is, it's not so much that he ever had it, or that he ever lost it, he tried to stop it and didn't stop it well enough. This play should be called, "John Casey, what the hell were you thinking?" To me, he never gets enough blame for this. Never. People don't look at that he wasn't in the play. And had Casey been in the play, I don't think that Yzerman takes that shot. I think that the Blues are able to get back, and it's a nothing play. But because Casey had no clue what he was doing, wasn't square to the shooter, this is what happens. We have this moment that lasted all the way until 2019. But with all that being said, guys, I think you missed one moment. I think there is one moment that is more gut-wrenching to Blues fans and to St. Louisans in a whole than any other. Now, in order for me to talk about that, I need to go to one more place. And I hope that the guys will kind of hold off on showing this one until near the end of the show. So, this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying, guys, enjoy talking about this. And I can't wait to see the rest of you on Aloha Commentary and Blue Note Fan Report. And I really want to hear what you think about my most gut-wrenching, grand finale gut-wrenching moment. Aloha, and I'll see you soon.
And there we go. There's the first two parts of his three-part Aloha commentary this week, and we will hold off on his third one until a little later on when we get to our honorable mentions, once we're crying into our drinks after getting done with the first stomach-turning moment. His honorable mention this week was Bob Gassoff. In case you don't know who Bob Gassoff was, he was a young defenseman who really had all the makings of being a Blues legend. I mean, he was a tough, nasty player, had amazing hair. I remember he had a beautiful head of hair. And he was, he had a single digit number, which, they don't just give to anyone. He was considered to be, like the next step after, the Plaguers. Basically, once the Plaguers faded, then it would be, Gassoff's defense. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't know who Bob Gassoff is unless we go to Enterprise Center and see his number on the rafters. But that's another good one, Bob Gassoff.
Yeah, it certainly is. And, just thinking about that, and then you parlay that into how many of the gut-wrenching early deaths that the Blues have had to suffer as well. Barclay Plager, Bob Gassoff, you throw in Doug Wickenheiser in there as well. And then even coming into present day, having Ari passing away, not necessarily a Blues player, but, lots of gut-wrenching deaths early in people's lives when it comes to the Blues. And yeah, it's definitely a gut-wrenching moment, not one that happened on the ice, but one that regrettably happened off the ice and essentially changed the course of the Blues franchise for the next 10 years.
Exactly. And it was such a big loss. And, we weren't around when, that tragedy happened, but we can definitely understand why. Guy was definitely around back then, and a lot of older fans were. So definitely a big loss there. Now, another thing I got to talk about with Guy's Aloha commentary, and we're going to just go ahead and jump right into our number one most stomach-turning moment here, is that he kind of blasted John Casey a little bit for how he handled that Steve Yzerman shot. I'm going to try to make the case here as we go on here why John Casey actually deserves more credit than, what he usually gets for, getting the Blues to where he was. And I also don't necessarily blame Casey for that shot. I don't think he expected it. I don't think I think I read an explanation once before that he was expecting it to go over the nets and into the end boards. But we'll get to that here in just a little bit. So we have to start our journey through this painful time as a Blues fan on February 27th, 1996. Wayne Gretzky, the great one, the guy that led the Oilers to all those cups in the 80s, the Babe Ruth of hockey, he's coming to St. Louis. He was traded by the Los Angeles Kings for Craig Johnson, Patrice Tardif, Roman Vopat, the St. Louis Blues fifth-round choice, who became a nobody, and a St. Louis first-round choice who became also a nobody, thank goodness, in 1997. Now, do you remember, Wags, where you were when you heard the great one was coming to town?
I was at my grandparents' house, and that would be, 1996. I was 11 years old. I actually just turned 11. February 16th is my birthday. So I was 11 for exactly 11 days when the news of Gretzky broke. And I just could not believe it because he was the great one. And at that point in my life, I only knew him from the Kings. I had never really understood his Edmonton career. So I only knew him from the Kings. And he was great. He was the great one. I remember playing him in video games and all that. And just to know that the Blues had him, it sent me over the moon. And I could not have been more excited for that moment. That's when I fell back in love with the St. Louis Blues, after 1992. That was when I fell back in love with the Blues. And I could not wait to see the Blues hoist the Stanley Cup now that we had Gretzky.
Yeah, I was a rabid Blues fan pretty much through the entire early 90s, and it never really subsided. I mean, but I do feel that like I hit another level of Blues fandom at that point than I, may have had like in the late 2000s, for instance, when they were playing like crap. I grew up with guys. I mean, like this was a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old's first exposure to hockey. So I grew up with Cujo. I grew up with Brett Hull. I grew up with Adam Oates, and then eventually Craig Janney. I grew up with Brendan Shanahan, those type of names. And I definitely knew who Wayne Gretzky was. You couldn't avoid the guy in the early 90s. He was just about on every single piece of merchandise that Michael Jordan was not on during that time period. He was an icon. He was an absolute icon. Guy Bensing, by the way, living in Great Lakes, Illinois, he was dancing around his living room. Now, I want to see you try to do some interpretive dancing like Luke Whitbin, on, the next Aloha commentary. That is your challenge. Yeah, actually, I take it back. You did some a couple episodes ago when we had you did the Janis Joplin tribute, but wait, not one Joplin. It was Joni Mitchell. I always get those two confused. You did that a couple episodes ago, but you got some competition with Luke Whitbin here, Guy. Keep up. No, I'm just kidding, Guy. You're awesome. I'm totally just ribbing you there. But yeah, so I was 8 years old. I even had the Tiger Electronics, Brett Hull, Wayne Gretzky shootout, which I have right back here. Bam!
Wow,
I had to buy.
Impressive.
Yeah, I had to buy this off of eBay because I lost the original one, but I'm impressed that I could find in 2019 a version as good as clean as this one. So there you go. So the night that it happened, and the word night is very important as our viewership just exploded. That's interesting. But as it was a nighttime. It was a nighttime announcement that Wayne Gretzky had been traded to the St. Louis Blues. I would have been 10 years old at the time, going on 11. And I remember my dad tucking me in, for bed. And he said his usual good nights and all that stuff. And, oh, by the way, Wayne Gretzky's a St. Louis Blue. And he closed the door. Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. I did not sleep that night. I remember the next day at school, I was a combination of giddy excited and just like absolutely dead tired because I had like maybe a half hour sleep tops because Wayne Gretzky's coming to town. And I remember the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the headline Wayne's World. And, it was and the big announcement. I think I still have that somewhere. It's buried in a box somewhere, but it was a huge, huge deal when Gretzky came to St. Louis because you had, for one, the media frenzy around Gretzky at the time was just insane. And I think anyone that was a member of the St. Louis Blues at the time could tell you that the media hounding him was just absolutely insatiable at the time. Now, how did he do as a St. Louis Blue? Now, in 18 games played in St. Louis, he had 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points, and he was a -6. But you don't remember the numbers so much. You don't remember the fact that maybe he wasn't, the Gretzky of the 80s or, even like maybe his first couple years in LA. But you remember the excitement around him, as I said. And in fact, I remember very distinctly the first goal that he scored as a St. Louis Blue. It was his very first game in a St. Louis Blues uniform. It was in Vancouver against the Canucks. And hey, would you look at that? I have the video of it right here.
The penalty box feeds Gretzky. He's got a breakaway. Fakes. He shoots. He scores! Wayne Gretzky, a breakaway goal against Kirk McLean. Number 99 has the first of many with the St. Louis Blues. Oh, baby, it's 2-0.
I was nervous tonight, but I'm glad I finally scored first period, and I don't have to hear anybody say, well, when are you going to score your first goal?
Finally scored. It was his first period in his first game as a Blue. Come on, Wayne. Come on.
The pressure he puts on himself, my God.
It's a wonder he still has hair, with all the pressure.
Great hair.
He's got fantastic hair. I wish I could have hair like that at his age. I wish I could have that hair now, but I don't. As you can see, I don't have that, anymore. But yeah, it was Gretzky's a St. Louis Blue. I still have tape of that game, by the way, and I think a couple other games because back then we had VCRs, and it was very easy to record from your TV to your VCR. And my dad still has a tape of those somewhere around it. It was must see TV back then. It really was. So he was playing on a line with Brett Hall. Al McGinnis had a really good year, one of his best as a Blue, 61 points in 82 games. Chris Pronger's coming along. He was still a very young guy at this point. Grant Fuhrer, an absolute Iron Man in net, playing 79 games, which, by the way, Wags, it's part applause for Fuhrer for being able to handle that kind of a workload, but also kind of like what the fuck are you doing, Mike Keenan, starting him with 79 games? Are you nuts? Just another one of Keenan's insanities, Wags.
Well, and think about what happened coming up. The fact that you had to go to John Casey in the playoffs because Fuhrer got injured. And not to say that you could look in the crystal ball and say, oh, well, Grant Fuhrer's going to get injured, so you're going to have to rely on John Casey. At some point, and we see this a lot now in the NHL with the split goalie tandems, but you have to let your backup play some games.
A little bit.
You have to, just to have him ready to go. And I think that might be a little bit why John Casey gets a lot of the bad rap here in St. Louis, because he came in essentially cold to the playoffs, and you're putting him in a bad position right off the bat.
And something interesting I kind of found as I was doing research for this was that John Casey only got in 9 games that year in the regular season. He didn't have the most backup games that year for the St. Louis Blues. It was a guy named Bruce Racine who had 11 games played for the Blues that year and a .313 goals against average. We'll get to Bruce Racine here in a little bit, and we'll also, of course, get into John Casey as well. But you have all that. Shane Corson's the captain. Jeff Courtnall's back after that shit-tacular trade with the Vancouver Canucks. Even Tony Twist beginning to build his legend as one of the tough guys of the year, one of the best in his era. I put him, about neck and neck with Pronger as far as who was the toughest. Of course, Joey Coaster fans and others might have an argument there.
Yeah, don't let Kelly Chase hear you say that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Chase. Well, not only that, Chase would kick all our asses, easily. Yeah. But he and Chase were in Twist rather were just amazing in the 90s. What people also tend to gloss over is that the Blues themselves didn't play that great with Gretzky. For the rest of the way after February 27th, after the trade was done, the Blues just had a 6-10-5 record, which was which we can kind of look at the reasons why. Like, we know Gretzky and Hull didn't gel very well. We also know that we are less than a year until Mike Keenan gets fired. So was it a lack of chemistry with Hull and Gretzky? Was it Keenan starting to lose the team? Or maybe was having Gretzky just a distraction and trying to fit him in? Because Gretzky was given the captaincy, I think, right away. It was Shane Corson, but it was given to Gretzky right away. So I don't really remember too much, besides, all the hullabaloo about Gretzky. But what do you think maybe led to the Blues' poor record that time, Wags?
It's the time-old tradition of you're bringing in a new player into a system that he probably hasn't played with, playing with players he hasn't.
Justin Falk, excuse me.
See, and I will back up that argument. Justin Falk didn't deserve the vitriol he got in his first season here because he's in a system he's not used to playing. I think the same thing sort of happened with Gretzky, and you add into that the distractions around him, the fact that he came in and was immediately given the captainship. why would you give somebody the captaincy who hasn't even played on the team? Yes, he's the great one, but I'm sure if you were to ask him, hey, you're going to get traded to a new team, should you assume the captaincy when you get there? Gretzky himself would probably sit there and tell you, look, I'm not there to step on anybody's toes. I'm there to play and win games, and I'm going to be supportive of whoever's the captain on that team. And yes, you can look at it and say, yeah, who's going to listen to Shane Corson over Wayne Gretzky? But I don't think Gretzky's a guy that's going to step into that locker room and demand to be heard.
No.
He's going to offer his 2 cents and his objectives, but he's not going to step on somebody's toes. He's going to support a guy like Shane Corson. So I think it's all the Keenan meddling. It's him coming in and giving Gretzky the captaincy. It's, allowing the distractions to take place. It's the other things that go along that weren't Gretzky. The Dale Hawerchuk thing. Just so many things that Keenan did. It all went into the pot, and I think that is ultimately why everything failed, because it seemed like people were walking on eggshells in the locker room despite having Wayne Gretzky in that same locker room.
And of course, Grant Fuhr was actually a recent guest on the Blue Note Fan Report that our Hawaii Blues fan hosts. So make sure to check that episode out for some more insight into what was going on in the locker room and through the minds of the players at that point. So small anecdotal note, we are taping this, by the way, on the 20th anniversary of the St. Louis Blues comeback win in Toronto over the Maple Leafs. The Blues were down 5-0 at one point, and they rallied to win 6-5. I don't remember that specific game very well, but that might be more impressive than the Monday Night Miracle, honestly.
Well, considering they were going up against Cujo in that game too, that makes me more crazy.
Poetic.
Yeah, I had given up on that game. I believe it was a Friday or Saturday night, one of the two.
Mm-hmm.
The Blues got down big early, and we decided to go to the mall. So we were walking, and this is back in the day when the malls were the thing. So we were at the mall, and we were walking around, and we happened to pass one of the sports stores that had a TV, and you saw it across the ticker on the ESPN bottom line. It was like 5-4. I'm like, oh, crap, what did I miss? Alexander Havanoff had 2 goals. Sasha Havanoff.
Sasha, my boy.
He of the bracket that we did this past
That's
summer.
Right.
COVID break. He had 2 goals. You had Jochen Hecht. You had Michael Hansu scoring goals. That was an epic because it happened in Toronto too. So not only are you going up against the Maple Leafs in Toronto against Cujo, you had a bunch of no-name players outside of McKinnon scoring goals in that game. It was just insane. I watched the replay of the highlights today, and I got chilled once again just watching it because that is, the Monday Night Miracle was amazing because it happened in the playoffs, but that game right there, it all happened in the third period. It wasn't even like a small chipping away. It all happened in like 16 and a half minutes in the third period. That is unbelievable.
I know Steve Dangle, who's a major Toronto Maple Leafs fan, has ranted about this game a couple of times. That's worth checking out if you just want to see a Toronto fan whine, incessantly. So we mentioned this because during this playoff run, in the first round, the Blues took on the Toronto Maple Leafs. In the first round, the Blues were a 5 seed, and Toronto was a number 4 seed. And by the way, remember, Wags, when the Blues and Maple Leafs were in the same division? I mean, what a time to be alive. That's almost unheard of to think about nowadays.
Well, yeah, because you have Toronto, Chicago was in that. I mean, it was literally the black and blue division.
Yeah.
It wasn't just the colors of the team. It was the colors of the guys' bodies after those games.
Rough.
That was some of the best hockey I can even remember back in the 90s. It was just insane.
Yeah, it was a great time to be a fan. Just a lot of tough games. It was the tough guy division, the old Norris division, back in the day. So let's go ahead and go to that first round matchup here. April 18th, 1996. The Blues won game 1. It's game 2 of the series. And there's a scrum in front of the net. My knee's starting to hurt already. Fuhr secures the puck. Pronger gives Nick Kyprios a nudge. I call it a nudge. And then Kyprios defies physics, falls the other way, and goes crashing into Grant Fuhr, who's on his knees. And Fuhr bends backwards and ends up shredding several knee ligaments in the process. Now, he still walks off because Grant Fuhr was an absolute warrior, still is. But whenever I saw John Casey come in, my heart dropped because I knew this team was going to be in big trouble without Grant Fuhr.
Yeah, no question. I mean, I'll be honest. I was in school at the time, so that was a late game. I ended up having to go to bed. It was past my bedtime, so I missed out on seeing that happen live, but waking up the next day and hearing the news and then watching the replay on TV, my heart sank as well, because like we said earlier, John Casey played in 9 games during the regular season, not 9 starts. He played in 9 games. Yeah. So you basically are bringing in a cold backup to come in. And as that series progresses, we're going to talk about your confidence in John Casey grew a little bit, but it was still like, man, where would we be at if Grant Fuhr were in net?
Well, and it was some small miracle that Fuhr was even playing, because one note that tends to be forgotten in time, and actually I didn't even know this until I looked it up today. Fuhr had dislocated a kneecap on the same leg on March 31st, and it was an injury that ended his consecutive game streak at 76. He could have played all 82 if he had wanted to, if he had not dislocated that kneecap. So just food for thought there. By the way, so I looked up some instant reaction at the time from that Grant Fuhr injury, and of course, we go up north to Canada for a couple of prognosticators were talking about it. The first person you're going to hear, we're going to play a couple clips here. The first one you're going to hear is Don Cherry talking about that. He's not wearing his drapes as a suit yet, so he actually has a pretty reasonable suit on. And then you'll hear the always rational, compared to Don Cherry anyway, Bob McKenzie, and then Pat Burns, who had just been fired by the Leafs, and right before he got hired by Boston, he was a TV analyst in Canada at the time for the playoffs, and he just absolutely drags Mike Keenan. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
I'm just getting a scoop. You're wondering why my eyes look dazed.
Why is this guy?
Grant Fuhr gone for the year. It's torn medial collateral.
Well, that's what I tell you, dude. Dummy defenseman. Chris thought he was doing a good thing.
You don't like this?
No. Hey, I'll get into this in a lot more detail later on tonight when we have the pregame show before the Toronto-St. Louis thing. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a joke. The NHL's got rabbit ears. They've got the butt. There's a lot of furor about this, if you pardon a bad pun, in St. Louis. And they're taking the easy way out, suspending a guy that the Leafs are going to go, hey, Nick Kypreos, he's already been the factor in the series, probably wasn't going to be a factor in the rest of the series, and the easy way out, we'll give him a game suspension, and let's bring down all the howling.
Yeah, Pat, Bob makes a good point. There won't be Richard-like riots over Nick Kypreos getting suspended for Toronto.
Well, while he's talking about that tonight, do I have to be here? Because I might have to go back in the league if I don't want to be accused of any kind of...
Stick around, we'll have
some fun. Ollie, we should call Mike Keenan, first of all, and try to find out the name of that doctor, because he's good. But this is all Mike Keenan theatrics out there. He can't play. That's not skating. That's just cruising around the rink. That's all Mike Keenan theatrics to try to psych out the Leafs. Look at guys, Grant's back. He's going to come and get you guys. There's no way in the world that guy can play.
Pat Burns had a lot more confidence in Grant Fuhr's knee than I think even Grant Fuhr himself. I wish Pat Burns was true and Fuhr did come back that playoffs and pulled a Willis Reed going down the aisle, but didn't happen. By the way, Don Cherry, did you love Don Cherry? Laying all the blame on Chris Pronger's doorstep for that one. I think history has proven that's not correct.
No, not at all. I mean, we've seen Chris Pronger make some bad plays, take some bad penalties, cost the team some games, but in no way, shape, or form was that a bad play by Chris Pronger. He was young. No. He was trying to clear the front of the net, trying to get the guy away from his goalie. And as you see in the clips that are played, Kypreos fell the other way.
Yes.
It was intentionally done. The dive was intentional. The intent to injure, not so much. But still, you have to think, if you're going to dive into a player, there's some sort of potential for injury. So while you may not have intended to injure somebody, the risk is there. And that right there should have warranted more than a game suspension. And I understand the argument, oh yeah, to quiet the fury, you're going to suspend Kypreos, who wasn't going to be a factor in this series. It quiets everybody down. Yeah, I mean, it had to be more than that, because he's a role player, but it's still something you should be taking out of the game.
Well, his analyst career should have begun right then and there, maybe, instead of, him lingering in the league for a couple of years. By the way, and the fact that Kypreos fell the other way and into Fuhr we're not saying anything provocative by that. Kypreos himself and Grant Fuhr even Kyprios has admitted, first of all, that he did fall into fear on purpose. It was to create chaos. It was trying to get into the heads of the Blues a little bit, trying to stir them up a little bit. It was game 2. I think the Leafs were down at that point. So they were trying to, he was trying to spark something, basically. And Fuhr agrees. In his documentary, The Making of Coco, he says flat out that, Kyprios, yes, that was the intent to fall on him. It was, he says that's just the type of player Kyprios was. But he agrees there was not an intent to injure. I think what happened. It was a freak thing. It wasn't Kyprios being a hitman trying to take out, the Blues Iron Man goalie, knowing that the Blues did not have, a backup nowhere near, Fuhr's level. But what happened. So in that series, the Blues ended up, they ended up losing game 2, 5-4 in OT. They ended up winning 3-2 and then 5-1 to take a 3-1 lead. Lost in overtime in game 5 and then won in game 6. And Casey wasn't bad. I think the Blues defense really tightened up around him. I think they everyone at the team kind of understood, what not having Fuhr meant and what not having Fuhr meant things needed to be done, to mitigate his loss. But Casey had to come up big. In game 4, he stopped 41 out of 42 Leafs shots. He did have a bad game 5, and then he rallied to stop 23 out of 24 in the series clinching game 6. So the Blues have taken care of the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're gone, and now it's time for Detroit and those White Russians.
Oh, I had to drink because I'm thinking about the Red Wings.
Yes, I know. Well, first of all, here's another reason. Here's more stats in favor of John Case. We have looked at this series through so many different angles. There's no point in rehashing them, except I'm going to look through the series through the eyes of John Casey. Game 1 stops 25 out of 28. Not bad. It was a 3-2 loss, but it wasn't bad. In game 2, he stopped just 23 out of 31 shots. And then he's replaced in the final 33 seconds by Bruce Racine, who we talked about earlier. Racine was actually the primary backup for much of the year for the Blues that year. We don't remember even who this guy was, but he never started a game, but he came in 11 games in relief of Grant Fuhr. He had 3 losses and a .313 goals against average, and that season, his 11 games with the Blues was the only NHL action he ever got, ever. That was his one crack at the NHL. He played in the minors the rest of his career, a little bit overseas. Even was named the team MVP twice by the Fort Wayne Comets, my favorite ECHL team, by the way. But back to John Casey. Game 3, he's thrown back out there because it's either him or Bruce Racine. And God, you don't want to start Bruce Racine. Oh, no. But John Casey goes back out there. I mean, granted, at this point, Casey's an experienced netminder. He was the starting goaltender for the North Stars for many years. So, you're going with the experience here, as Keenan tended to do with every decision he made. Casey stopped 30 of 34. Okay. But then game 4, a 29 save shutout. And the Blues tied the series 2-2 with that win. It was a 1-0 win. Game 5, Casey stops 37 out of 39, helps the Blues to a 3-2 win. And here we are, Wags. The Blues lead 3-2. And holy shit, John Casey's a revelation. I mean, this might actually happen. The Red Wings dynasty might get stopped before it begins. And it didn't work out like that, Wags.
It didn't. The big thing is that game 5 victory was in Detroit, so you had a chance to come back home and finish out the Red Wings, and that's why I think this is even more painful, because they essentially slayed the Dragon in Detroit, and then were able to come home and have a chance to close it out, and I think that's why it hurts so much more.
Yeah, so Casey, he ends up laying an egg in game 6, allowing 4 goals and 22 shots, and then game 7 he stops 39 Red Wing shots. He should have stopped 40. And if you excuse me, I need a drink here real quick.
Oh, he's down in it.
Yeah, I had to finish that glass off because this next part's going to be rough. All right, here we go. Just over a minute into the second overtime of Game 7, 0-0, Wayne Gretzky steals the puck, or so it appeared, in what some would call lazy puck handling. It caroms off his stick, ends up on Steve Yzerman's stick. Yzerman cuts through center ice, skates just barely before the blue line, and he fires a shot. It looks like it's nothing. It looks like it might be a dump and chase kind of a deal where it just caroms around the backboards and back out to one of the sideboards. It looks like nothing, but it becomes something. It becomes a goal, slipping by an astonished John Casey, who I will say, guys, right. When you look at the replay, it looked like John Casey had no idea what was coming at him, and for all he knew, it was John F. Kennedy's sniper going for him. I mean, it's kind of how it looked like. He kind of like olayed it a little bit, like he was afraid to touch it. It slips underneath the crossbar just barely. Detroit fans explode. History is made once again at the expense of the Blues, and I wept. It was a Saturday night. I went to church the next day in my Gretzky jersey, this very one right here. You're literally looking at history with that Gretzky jersey, and I was not very Christian-like with the kids in my class Sunday morning. I just sat there in angry silence, the kind of silence you see in a person, you don't even say hello. You're kind of even afraid to look at the guy because you're afraid he'll stab you. That's kind of how I was. I was very, loudly quiet, if that makes sense. And it was a rough month in general for me. It took me a while to get back to normal. It was tough, and I know a lot of Blues fans were, feeling very similar. But where were you, Wags, when Yzerman ripped that shot, and how did you cope?
Once again, over at my grandparents' house, because at that time we were living with them for a little while as we transitioned from one house to another, and it just so happened that's where we were at when that game went down. And I was kind of the same way as you. I was crushed. That was my first real taste of heartache and a broken heart. And I always tell people my heart was broken not by a girl, but by the St. Louis Blues. That's true to this day, that the Blues are the first broken heart that I've ever had, because we had Gretzky, we had Hall, we had Pronger, McKinnon, Fuhrer. Yes, he didn't get a chance to play in this series, but they had done everything right. They beat Detroit in Detroit. They had a 3-2 series lead. They had the momentum. They believed in themselves, all with Mike Keenan still in charge at the expense of Mike Keenan. They had the shot. This was going to be it. And then for it to end as anticlimactic as it was. And yes, I say that about a 2 overtime game in Joe Louis Arena with the puck on Steve Yzerman's stick. I mean, that was the most anticlimactic way to end. It was like when the Hawks win the Stanley Cup against Philadelphia on that Patrick Kane goal that no one saw go in. I mean, you sit there and you go, wait, did that happen? What? How did that even happen? And yeah, for me, I was the same way. It took me a month and a half to really kind of come out of that funk. And I was almost scared to watch the next season. I really, really was. And then when they started off as poorly as they did, it almost confirmed my fears. And I wouldn't say I went away from the Blues for a little while, but I wasn't as active in my fandom for that year. But they got me back. I mean, Pronger, McKinnon, when they brought in Quenneville, I was like, okay, I saw what he did in Colorado, and I'm like, this is the guy. And we all know how that ended up too.
Yeah, I can definitely feel you on that hangover, and I think I also kind of, for the first few months of that next season, just like I was very dubious about the Blues. That's basically the best word that could describe my feelings about the Blues, because I'd invested in all this time and energy and hope and tears, even into a team, and I was not getting the return back from this team. When you're, and it sounds simplistic, but when you're 11 years old, and this is your first time you've had that kind of experience, that's how you react. If you're a hardcore sports fan like we are. My friend Tim, by the way, that night he says he was yelling at John Casey for not stopping the puck. I can see that. And then Gibbs, a proud St. Louis Blues fan, one of our Twitter followers, says he was in disgust on the floor at my parents' living room, which was about what I was that night. So I'm glad to know I'm not alone in admitting, my open weeping over what happened in that game. So, by the way, Luke Whitman takes a more pragmatic approach here. Everyone asks what you would do with a time machine. I would tell John Casey to get his angles right. Now, I will say this in John Casey's defense. The one class that I failed in high school was geometry. So I don't blame Casey for not getting his angles right, because I couldn't get my angles right either, in high school until I had to take geometry a second time. So, there you go.
And you don't have a puck flying at you at 100 miles an hour, too.
That's true. When I have all the time in the world, I can't do geometry well. When John Casey has a puck flying at him 100 miles an hour, he can't do geometry well either. So maybe cut him just a little slack, just a little bit. Anyway, that's all we have to say about that. That is our number one most stomach turning moment. I need another drink. I'm probably going to grab one here in a little bit, because we're going to get to our honorable mention here. And before we get to that, we have one final segment from Guy, the YA Blues fan. He's going to talk about one of his top moments. And let's go ahead and play that right now while I go find myself another bottle to crawl into.
Well, now I feel our journey has come to an end. I am standing in front of the Honolulu War Memorial Natatorium. This building was put up after 1945 in honor of war veterans. However, in 1979, it became unusable, and it's sat here since then. No one knows what to do with it. The city and county are studying it, but sooner or later, it will probably be torn down. And that brings me to my grand, gut-wrenching moment. This. That's right. The arena coming down in, I think it was 1999, in February of 99, if I remember correctly, is my most gut-wrenching moment. The number of games that I've seen there, and all the things that I had done, and the concerts and all of that, getting Brett Hull and Adamo to sign my puck outside of the front of it before a game, things like that. Just when I see this video, and I didn't get to see this live, I got to see it months, I think even a year later, before I finally got to see it, it still just tears a part of me out. Yes, we have a beautiful new building now, but I'll never forget on ESPN one time during a Blackhawks and Blues game, they drew an outline around the building, and when the wave was going, you could see the building shaking. So, guys, this is the moment I think you missed. Sorry about that. I just got to say it's been so much fun doing this segment up to this point. So, this is Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, saying aloha, mahalo, and I will see you again on my next Aloha commentary and on the Blue Note Fan Report. By the way, please check out the Blue Note Fan Report's interview with Jim Thomas and Tom Timmerman of the Post-Dispatch. They give a lot of good insight into how the Blues are shaping up for the next season. Aloha!
Man, the gut punches just keep on coming. When he's talking about that one being one we missed, I agree. I think that is definitely a gut punch that we missed, because I remember going to the arena, and ironically, the one game I remember seeing in the arena was against the Kings and Wayne Gretzky. I mean, we got obliterated. It was like 8-3, but that was the one game I saw in the arena. And to have to relive that demolition, oh man.
Don't mind me. This is a very hard episode, so I'm coping here.
I was say, I thought you were getting a refill. It looks like that cup's empty again.
No comment. Yes. So, the arena was also a very sad moment for me. And I was about 14 when that thing went down, and no tears, but it was, it's sad now for me because I live right down the street off of Oakland from the arena. I'm on the other side of Hampton, and I always think about the arena every time I, drive by it. And it's a place I missed. I have some memories from the arena. I didn't go to enough games to where it's like I can't tell you the exact layout of the arena. Like I can tell you like how how Enterprise Center is laid out. I can pop that up right there. I didn't go to enough games in the arena where I could do that. But I can remember I remember enough to where it makes me sad that we haven't gone. And we didn't put that in our top 10, but maybe we should have. Just because I know for the longest time. Remember, Wags, when they were thinking of making an aquarium.
Yeah.
They were thinking. I think that was one of many ideas they had just to keep the thing going. And now go ahead.
I was gonna say, it was part of the skyline. It was part of the history of that area, and to have it gone was tough. It was very tough. And yeah, they did everything they possibly could to keep it there. I mean, they still had monster truck places, things going on there. They still had concerts going on there. I mean, it should have been considered a historical landmark, for God's sake.
It should have. I agree with you. I mean, the place was kind of a dump. But by the time it was done, it was not the prettiest place in the NHL to go attend and watch a game. I know I remember like the press box. I think you had to climb a ladder to get up to the press box. It was kind of primitive. But I mean, they could have renovated it, and they could have turned it into something interesting. Like it would be nice to see youth hockey being played there or something like that. Like if we had a junior hockey team, maybe they could play there. But alas, they could not figure it out, and now it is dime a dozen office and apartment space. So
I'm pretty sure iHeartRadio is there too.
I think among other things. Yeah, there is a brew pub there. I think it's literally called the Brew Pub because they were so original. They can only think to call their restaurant the Brew Pub.
I guess we're not getting a sponsorship from them.
No, we are not. We are not. The arena should still be there, in my opinion. But speaking of the arena, one of the stars in the St. Louis arena in its late days was Brett Hall, and he is our honorable mention. Brett Hall leaving St. Louis to join the Dallas Stars 2 years after the disaster against Detroit. And we kind of addressed this during the Keenan episode as well. So we're not going to like get too into the weeds as to, what happened with Hall. But, Hall and Keenan infamously did not get along. We covered that. By this point, he also kind of gained a reputation for being a selfish player. And this was a reputation he would shed later in his career as he started changing the way he played in Dallas. And then ultimately in Detroit, he was like an ultimate team player for Detroit. He was he wasn't the primary goal scorer for them, but he was starting to pass the puck more and just, being more of a team player. But before he left St. Louis, I get the feeling he was just done with St. Louis. He had gone through the ringer with Keenan. He didn't like Joel Quenneville either. People tend to forget. I mean, it wasn't just Hull and Keenan. Brett Hull didn't like Joel Quenneville either. According to Sports Illustrated, during the last season, Hull was unhappy over the prospect of leaving the Blues, and during a training camp practice, he fired a puck at coach Joel Quenneville. Hull was then startled when Quenneville retaliated and fired a puck back at him. And Quenneville said, I don't want to talk about it. Brett and I addressed it. We moved on. And do you remember that incident? The puck incident with him and Quenneville?
No, I don't. I don't remember that very well at all, actually. That's new information to me, but not surprising in the least either, because Quenneville was a fiery coach. He was not going to take any crap from anybody.
No.
He had to deal with Patrick Waugh. So, I mean, you go from Patrick Waugh to anybody else, you're not taking crap from anybody.
Yeah, Mark Bergevin, who, of course, now is the Montreal Canadiens GM, but he played with the Blues in the late 90s. He said after he arrived in St. Louis, he didn't think the Blues would ever win a cup because of Hull's selfishness and selfish play. So Hull would move on. After the puck shooting incident, he rejected a 3-year, $15 million offer by the Blues, signed a 3-year, $17 million deal with the Dallas Stars. Why Dallas? Well, according to SI, it kind of surprised him that they were interested in him, but they felt Ken Hitchcock felt that they needed more firepower that offseason because they got an early playoff exit and they had trouble scoring. And they also included a no trade clause, which the Blues didn't. And I'm gonna give you a line here from Blues general manager Larry Plow that is oddly prophetic to what the Blues just went through with Alex Pietrangelo. Blues general manager Larry Plow told SI, quote, "With anybody, not just Brett, if you give him a no-trade contract, you're giving the player more power than the coach, more power than the other players or management." End quote. Gee, Wags, doesn't that sound familiar with Doug Armstrong and Petro's insistence on a no-movement clause?
What? Sorry, that was my Scooby-Doo impression. But I can't believe that's the case. I mean, it almost makes it seem like it's a St. Louis Blues policy that you don't give out no trade clauses to your superstars. But it just goes to show you that what Doug Armstrong was thinking is something that's been around for a long time, at least in the St. Louis area, is that, you're not giving a player control over a team or a player or management. And to know that Brett Hull went through the same thing as Alex Pietrangelo, I'm just glad that Petro has a Stanley Cup with the Blues, because I don't think I could stand having a guy like Petro not have a cup here, leave in the same manner as Brett Hull, and then win a cup with Vegas.
Yeah, I know, right? And of course, Hull, he was my childhood hero and my icon, and I wasn't privy to any of this contract talk and a lot of the backroom stuff, but it hurt me when on November 14th, 1998, Brett Hull scored his 1,000th point in his career as a member of the Dallas Stars. And I felt angry and hurt over that because that's a moment that should have happened here in St. Louis, but it didn't because, it wasn't one reason. It was, as we kind of have relayed, it was just Hull was frustrated. The Blues were frustrated with Hull. And it was just, it's one of those things where, like Luke mentioned, going into a time machine and telling, John Casey to get his angles right. I don't know if that could have ever been repaired with Hull and the Blues. I think that was just a situation that was destined for a divorce.
Even if Gretzky would have stayed, if Gretzky would have re-signed with the Blues, do you think Brett Hull may have grinned and bared it for a year and then really started to see what Gretzky does as far as leading by example and maybe changed his stripes a little bit?
I think what would have happened, I think Hull would have, as you said, grinned and bared for a year. I think he did want to legitimately give him and Gretzky a shot. I mean, because as you pointed out, when a player sometimes is acquired in a trade deadline, it takes him a little bit to gel with his teammates or his line mates. And when you have a guy with Hull's mentality and skill set, it's hard for him to adapt, to a guy that's like a superstar level type of a guy in Wayne Gretzky. Even though Gretzky was 33, he was still, very, very, very good for his time. And I think Hull would have given it a year. I don't necessarily think it would have worked. I based on what I saw with him and Gretzky, I think they still would have clashed. I think, as you said, Gretzky's not a iron-fisted, captain and a leader, my way or the highway type. He's not that way at all, but he is kind of a lead by example guy, and he is a strong presence, no matter where you are. I mean, you always know Wayne Gretzky's in the room wherever you are. He's just that type of personality, and I don't know if Brett Hull's ego could have handled it.
Yeah,
at least for a while.
Hull wouldn't have been able to play in Gretzky's shadow, I don't think, and because Hull was the forward here in San Jose. I mean, you had great defenders in McInnes and Pronger, and they rightly got their pub. But when it came to the forwards on the Blues team, if it was Hull, great. If it's Gretzky, Hull, that ego may not have allowed him to last here, unfortunately, because that could have been a dynamic team. It
really could have been, but it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. So that is going to end our journey through the most stomach-turning moments in St. Louis Blues history. Of course, we know that it took 8 years for fences to be mended between Hull and the Blues. Dave Checketts took over from Bill Laurie in the mid-2000s, and I remember this very distinctly. When Checketts bought the team, like his first act was to retire Brett Hull's number. And that was a good gesture by him. It showed that he understood. Dave Checketts, we don't talk about Dave Checketts too much because in the grand scheme of things, he was a breath of fresh air from Bill Laurie, but he didn't really accomplish much as an owner, I don't think. At the very least, I would say my opinion on him is kind of neutral, but I will say, but he will always be, neutral with a slight lean towards favorite because he bought the team from Bill Laurie, and Bill Laurie was an absolute joke. Well, it was a bad era.
You had to think about all the things that happened with Checketts. Yes, there was the misstep of basically giving concession sales to a private firm or to the group so the Blues can't recoup the concession fees and stuff. There's a lot of things that happen financially on that side that you go, oh man, that was not a good deal for the Blues. But you look at the things that he did. He retired Hull, retired McInnes, brought in John Davidson. He brought in, Jarmo Kekalainen. Darren Pang was kind of brought in during the Checketts era as well. And you're like, oh, a broadcaster, what's that going to do? Darren Pang has brought a lot of credibility to the St. Louis Blues organization. And then you throw in what Checketts did for the fans. They had the free food days down there as well. And that really kind of helped in the doldrums of that time frame when the Blues weren't all that good. It brought fans to the arena, and it gave them early knowledge about what hockey was and built a lot of new fans from that. And then you throw in the TJ Oshie and Patrick Berglund and David Perron and the young guys that team had. So I think there was a lot more positives from the Checketts regime than people want to give him credit for. It still wasn't all that great, but I think a lot of the seeds that were planted then ultimately led to what happened in 2019. So I like to think of Checketts in a positive light.
And Luke's right. Checketts allowed the fan base to heal, and he really did set up the next group. And, a lot of that was also, done when Doug Armstrong took over from Larry Plow. And, I could do an episode on Larry Plow someday because I wasn't his biggest fan. I was not Larry Plow's biggest fan. He was, he never ran the team into the ground or anything like that, or at least not by choice, because of the, I'm alluding to the Pronger trade. That was something that Laurie demanded that he do. I always felt Larry Plow was conservative as a GM, and he didn't like to roll the dice very much, say for the Kachuk and Wade deals. I mean, what other big deals did he really make? I mean, he got Turek, but he only got Roman Turek because the Dallas GM interrupted Larry Plow's family barbecue to get to offer Turek to him. I mean, this wasn't something Plow was hardcore pursuing. It just kind of happened. I He didn't like taking chances. I was very overjoyed when he retired in 2010 and Doug Armstrong took over. Although I guess we do got to give Plo credit for Pietrangelo and I think he was still the GM when Perron was taken as well. So I mean, there's pluses and minuses to Plo, but I don't view him as favorably as others.
And he was kind of the anti-Walt Jocketty in St. Louis.
Anti-Ron Caron.
Anti-Ron Caron, guys that were wheeling and dealing, and he was more conservative. And yeah, you can look at that and go, yeah, he was conservative. He didn't do anything to push this team forward, but he allowed the scouting department to do its work, and he didn't necessarily give away a lot of draft capital in a sense.
Yeah.
And once again, just like Checkits, it's planting the seeds of the future. And yeah, you got to have some luck in that as well. You got to have these picks, kind of play out and work out. But he kind of allowed that to happen. I think he saw the writing on the wall and knew what was going to happen and was like, there's no reason. And with the Wade and Tkachuk deals, he brought those guys in, but he also shipped them out to get draft capital. And then he was able to bring them back in as well. So there are, once again, you said positives and negatives to it. I view him a little bit more positive, and also everything that he had to go through with his wife and her battle with cancer and things like that. There was a lot of pieces that went around with that, and he got a lot of flack for the Pronger deal as well. And I think that kind of hurt his legacy in St. Louis as well.
Yeah, and I think we can all agree that Larry Plo was a lot better GM than Brett Hull was during his time in Dallas. Brett Hull, great player, a very stubborn and eccentric human being, and a lousy GM. I think we can all agree on that. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Of course, don't forget that on Thursday, we are going to have the Blues first round pick, Jake Neighbors, on Blue Notes. If you have a question for Jake Neighbors, please respond to our Twitter post we just made here in the last half an hour or so. Get your questions in. We're going to record with Jake Neighbors tomorrow at 4:00 Central Time. So get your questions in before then, and we'll be happy to pass them along. We're looking forward to having Jake Neighbors on our show as well. Of course, Luke Widman, new video today. And according to Luke, there exists a full song version with interpretive dance, but the world isn't ready. Luke, I look forward to when you finally muster up the courage, maybe need a couple of these, and post that on YouTube. We will certainly share that. At the very least, we'll share the version that we played earlier whenever you do post that, Luke. But Luke Widman at Teriyaki Fingers, the guy is an absolute musical genius. Thank you to Luke. Thank you to Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, for his Aloha commentary. He will continue on with us in season 2, which will officially start on Thursday for us. This is going to kind of our conclusion of season 1 of Blue Notes. Season 2 begins this Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts from. Again, the Thursday episodes will just be audio only. And then we'll still do our Sunday episodes live like this, here, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or Twitch or listening wherever you get your podcasts from. That's how we'll handle our Sunday, Monday episodes. Thursdays are going to be audio only. Any final thoughts, Wags?
I'm surprised I didn't cry. I'm kind of happy I was man enough to get through it without shedding a tear. The alcohol helps, definitely. But I'm ready for season 2. I'm excited. What a way to kick it off with the Jake Neighbors interview on Thursday. And we're only going to go up from there. So make sure you guys join us in season 2 because it is going to be phenomenal.
Onward and upward here on Blue Notes. And we're going to be glad to be a part of your lives, hopefully for this next season. Whenever there is a next season, who the hell knows? But in the meantime, we're going to be with you along the way. So that's going to do it for this episode. I want to thank you for listening and watching, because without you, there is no me. There is no Wags. There is no Hawaii Blues fan. There is no Luke Widman. There is no Hockey Podcast Network. And by God, there certainly is no Blue Notes. I'm Tom Franklin, reminding you to not be a chump and always play to the whistle. Jeremy Boyer. Wait, actually, hang on. Jeremy, calm your fingers down for a little bit. Luke Widman, play us out.
I'm going under, and this time I fear I've lost all my feeling. This all or nothing is the price to pay for hiring Keenan. He traded Shanny away, and Cujo as well. Got rid of Duchesne, Fierce waits off the scale, but he got back in shape, and Pronger was great. And then in February we all heard of the trade. Now the Blues lead on the grade 1, and like the whole team is over 30 bucks. We've got Gretzky and we've got Brett Hall. I was thinking that St. Louis was gonna win the cup. We're in the playoffs with the hottest goalie in the league. The Blues were rolling with a Game 1 win against the Leafs. Then our dreams were crashed right into the goal. Fierce knee ripped to shreds by Nick Kyprios. With Casey and net, the Blues would win anyway. Down 2-0 in the next round, they came back with 3 straight. Now the Blues lead the Red Wings 3-2. But in Game 6, they couldn't break through. Game 7, no score. 2 OT, no luck. And that's when Gretzky had it and lost the puck. And I tend to close my eyes, 'cause it hurts every time I think about that shot. It's a grade 1 glide, eyes are men, surprise breaks heart. What was belief ends in a wrenching loss, and Gretzky's not here when the next season starts. We let our guard down, and Keenan pulled the rug. I was thinking that St. Louis was gonna win the cup, and the Red Wings, they always kicked us out for 3 years. 4th year was stars with Hall. That's what we get for getting our hopes up. I was thinking that St. Louis was gonna win the cup. Now we're the best team, a new millennium. I am sure the Sharks won't keep the Blues from winning the cup.